So Wargaming just put out a stream where they answered a lot of questions that the community had, and also they wanted to give us some clue whether they were actually listening to the feedback that so many of us actually delivered. And I know there has been a lot of criticism, including from myself and mostly from the community here. And that's why we are going to just explain what is actually happening here, just to summarize the entire stream that Wargaming did here. I'm not even going to look over all of it. You don't have to spend an eternity on it. Let's dive into it. So despite the harsh criticism about the Reforged update, they actually have been kind of happy with the test, not with the feedback, that can be said for sure. They have announced that there were about 300,000 games on the Ultra test already, which allows them to make some changes. Also, they have gathered a lot of feedback, a lot of data, yet they have to say, or they did say, that it is not enough yet in terms of data to really make final balance changes. So we are still going to see a lot of changes, and we are also going to already get some changes very soon for the next testing client. That is what they announced here. Also a lot of graphics updates, a lot of design updates concerning the commanders, concerning the lava on the one map. It is Yamato Harbor actually, and then there is also a change to the colors of the teams. Many of you have complained, or also myself, I also have complained about the team's colors, as you could not see the actual numbers there, the hit points or the damage dealt was really tricky to see. So Wargaming decided to actually reverse the colors in-game, not to have the turquoise color and red, but just have the original green and red again. About the commanders, Wargaming already said that the feedback wasn't all that positive, as you probably all know. So they are going to rework the design of the current commanders and also that of those in the future. So that is probably good news to most of you guys here, as that was really not all that welcome so far. Also, they did mention that there is going to be a balance change. Of course, some of those commanders have already been rebalanced. One commander has been removed entirely. Something else, some other commander has been reworked or is in the reworks already. So there is that, and also they did mention that the commanders were intentionally a lot stronger on the test than they are supposed to be in the future. Also because they wanted to see the effect and did not want to have to guess on what kind of effect these, or what kind of impact these commands are actually having on the battle. So they rather did go a step too far just to scale it back then in the end. We will see how that goes actually. Apart from that, I did not really say much about the future designs that are going to be there. They did not show anything yet, so I'm just going to show you the current commanders at this point. If you want to know more about the commander specifics, I actually put out an entire video about this a bit earlier. Maybe check that out later. Then we're coming to the sets, which also has been a huge matter of debate here in the criticism around Reforged. And there is also good reason for that, because it is looking a little bit chaotic when just looking at it. You don't really know where things are, and Wargaming is addressing that already. First of all, they wanted to give some reasons for the sets, so let's talk about those first. So this is the reason for the sets here. What I also felt like many people would misunderstand on the feedback that I get on my community here. The reason for the sets is actually that it is making stuff easier to understand. This doesn't seem all that apparent here if we are looking at those sets, because we have everything unlocked. Most of us who have tested have everything unlocked. But that is very different than when we are actually looking at beginners, because beginners only have access to a very limited amount of sets based on the progress in their profile, where there is a player level. At the start, you only have a couple of sets, couple of beginner sets. If I look at the search here, you can see there is also a search option for certain tags like beginner sets. Then they have only a very limited amount of sets available, which are often not even going up to the highest tier. And like that, they are going to have an easier time grinding, and they are just not going to be too overwhelmed with the entire tech tree, because it's a huge tech tree and they don't know what to do then. And therefore it just gets to be easier for them. Also, they don't get to apply the highest tiers immediately, and once they have access to the highest tiers, they won't have the trickiest tanks to apply. Like if we are looking at the expert sets here, there are some sets like the Griller set, then there is also a light tank set over here, also like the Batshot set. all kinds of different alternatives here that are really requiring some skill. So actually, I personally like this change here with the sets, just that it is still flawed in some regards. Also, they did mention in that currently some sets are not really that welcome in the way that they are actually being combined. Some tanks don't really make sense in certain sets, and Wargaming also said that they are going to make some changes to those based on the player feedback. Also, the sets are going to address an issue of the tech trees that we are currently having are just being way too many tanks, and also way too many nations. So for beginners, it's really hard to see. And if there were more nations to be added, like the European tech tree, for example, it's currently one nation, although it could be multiple. But they are also mentioning there in the stream that if they were to add even more nations and even more tanks to each nation, then it would just be impossible to navigate, especially for the beginners. For the veterans like us, not so much, but that is what they wanted to change with the sets. Although I get to here, it's not that easy to see right here, of course, and that's why they actually mentioned they were going to give another overview of the sets that's already in the making, that's already being developed right now. There was nothing showed about that yet, so we will have to wait and see, and I hope that it's going to be good, because this, of course, it looks great in my opinion, but it just is not really practical. If you want to find certain tanks, then you can just type in your name up there, for example. Of course, that works out as well, but then it's still not really, like, you don't see the tanks that are within the set. You still have to press the set, and then you get to see the whole thing, and it's just not really that easy to see. So to conclude, Wargaming wants to add an overview to the sets that is very similar to the tech trees that we are currently having. Also, in regards to the navigation here with a filter system, that's also currently absolutely horrific here with the factions, when we are all used to saying nations, and it's just not possible to really find the tanks as easily as we're used to. It just all looks a bit weird. So Wargaming said they were going to redevelop this filter system as well to have it more similar to the current game. Also, the carousel that we see in the garage, all these tanks down here, and those are also, this carousel is also going to be reworked in a way that is a lot more similar to the current Blitz, which is good news, I guess. More criticism was about the keys that you need to unlock the sets, of course, especially since some sets were just closed still of some, even if you had the tanks already, like some collected tanks, and these keys were, the sets were locked still. Wargaming said that those will be unlocked. That was rather a bug so far, and also that the keys, they are not, like many people are saying, the keys are just meant to make them money. Of course, in some way they also are going to make money to Wargaming, but mainly you have to be knowing that actually you do get the keys for free if you are just playing regularly. So if you are grinding your tanks, you will always have enough keys available to unlock new sets. That's what Wargaming said on the stream there. So you're never going to run out of keys, actually. Only when you pay to progress, if you want to grind up a lot faster, then you will run out of keys as well, and then you will have to purchase keys. The reason for that is also that they don't want new players to grind up the tiers or just buy the way up the tiers, progress way too quickly to the highest tier immediately, just to make it a bit more playable for the veterans, and just just have an increased quality of gameplay on higher tiers. I can actually see that point. I hope you do so as well. And the fact that they still make it possible to just buy keys is debatable. And we don't know how many keys you actually get. I just hope that it is going to be fine, that you are just not going to run out of keys anyway soon, and that it is going to be balanced. But also, any of us experienced players, we're not going to lose any progress here. We are still having a lot of keys available. I don't even know how many I have right now, but I definitely had like over 30 already, and therefore I will be covered for any tanks that are going to come out and wouldn't have to buy any. About making stuff easier, Wargaming also mentioned something else, and that is about the economy, which has already been reworked quite a bit, and they are still in the progress of reworking it. And Apparently stuff is not final yet, as with most of it that was presented in this update, in this ultra test, because it is only one test of many more, and therefore the economy is also going to change still. That is also good news, I guess. Not everything has been cheaper than before. Some stuff has been more expensive, which wasn't really meant to be. And also concerning the economy, there were some changes to the provisions and also in the ammunition. Let's talk about ammunition first. As you can see, the ammunition is in unlimited amounts for AP and HE on the Reforged update. You will only have to buy the premium shells still, and you can only buy them for credits, not for gold anymore. And therefore, you're not ever going to have to look at how you just split up the ammunition, because you're not going to have limited spots anymore for the ammunition or slots. And that means that people have to worry a lot less about resources, and they are not going to make any negative credits or so, because Wargaming said that actually people just usually they have all the stuff equipped already, and they are just not. They're not going to bother about equipping ammunition anymore once they did it for once, and therefore it's not really like it would make sense to have the option to really switch around all that much. And also people who are just starting, they were sometimes not having enough ammunition, or they were just not understanding stuff, and therefore this just makes it easier, while it doesn't really give us reason to bother if we are already on a higher level. Another thing that is a bit more controversial there is about provisions. Provisions have been removed or will be removed in the Reforged update. Also here the reason is that many beginners are not playing with provisions or at all, or are just going for a very limited amount of provisions. For the veterans, for the pro players, yes, of course, we do switch the provisions. We do have our preferred setups, and that is just actually something that we try to refine a lot, try to play around with. Yet also the provisions do make negative credits, and they are something that is only set up once and left in place. So it's not really adding fun to the game, and therefore Wargaming said, okay, we're just going to remove it. This is not adding anything for the beginners, just rather making it harder to play and giving the team a disadvantage if a beginner is not aware of provisions and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope that the effect of provisions is being balanced into the future tank system, because I don't want to just have worse tanks actually, just because the provisions are gone. So I hope that they are going to rebalance the tanks according to the lack of provisions, so that the tanks remain the same level. One more thing that people have been very angry about was about the statistics, of course, as they changed quite a lot. They do not look anything like we're used to, but Wargaming said that they are just not final yet, and we are still going to see the same amount of the same stats that we are used to, like win rate, damage, etc. Currently that all looks weird and wrong actually, and Wargaming is still working on that to make it possible to see like random stats and rating stats next to each other, and also give us all the stats still that we're used to. So they are not making any change to that. That's also good news. We're not going to lose anything there. Also, they assured us that Masteries would still be available, because there has been some controversy about the Mastery emblems not being in the game in ranked mode, and that is also not going to be the case. Wargaming is going to keep them, just they were not in the ultra test here. Lastly, API support, which is also kind of hard for Wargaming to make possible. They did mention that they actually know that Blitz stars and other websites will be cut off, especially for the start, and they are currently cut off with the ultra test. But Wargaming announced that they are actually going to try to give them access, and it will be possible for them to still access our stats, so we can still keep using Blitz stars, even if Wargaming said that it is not going to be possible on release of the Reforged update. Not necessarily. So I hope that they are also giving it not the last priority, and that they are actually making it possible for these website developers to still keep their businesses running, actually, even if they are probably mostly just running them by the side of their main job. But nonetheless, it's important to just not cut them off for too long, because then they're going to stop developing. And that would be a shame, because we all love BlitzStars and that kind of stuff. And luckily, Wargaming actually agreed on that. They also use BlitzStars, the employees, they also play the game, of course, and therefore that was actually good news to hear. So yeah, to sum it up, there is a lot of stuff that is not final in the current alpha test, and Wargaming still has some work to do. I was happy to hear that they are having a lot of stuff, a lot of feedback that they are considering seriously, and that they are working on making possible. Still, I feel like there is still more to it. There's still more criticism that can be brought up that is not working out just yet, like the lack of crew skills, which is not being accounted for with the commanders. Also, just certain commanders just maybe being unbalanced, I don't know. I think the balance will be easier to make possible for the commanders, actually, but just having the lack of crew skills that is decreasing your tank strength, that is not what I want, actually. So I hope that Wargaming is still going to develop something in that regard as well. And that's already it. Thanks for watching, guys.